Before I get into this commentary, let me give a shout out to Trill Texas on Twitter for tagging me in this post. And this is coming from the Daily Beast, posted March 23rd, 2022, where we have this individual in this picture whose name is Franklin Barrett Sechriest. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. If I'm incorrect, forgive me. But this individual right here did two crimes. He committed two crimes. But only one of the crimes that he committed is what got the attention. The two crimes he committed was he set a synagogue on fire, and the other one was he is accused of terrorizing black students. Can you guess which one got him arrested? Okay, now that we've all figured it out, let's continue and get into this article. A Texas college student accused of torching a synagogue last Halloween pulled off an armed robbery on his own school's campus 3 months before setting the fire, prosecutors said in a previously unreported court filing. Franklin Barrett Sechriest, age 18, was arrested last November by criminal investigators with the Austin Fire Department, who identified the Texas State freshman thanks to surveillance footage from the synagogue that captured images of his license plate. Now here he is, 18. I'm not sure when his birthday is. I'm not sure if he's 19 yet or whatever the case may be. Here he is, he's 18, which means he was born in 2003 and he has that much hate in his heart. I was 14 when he was born, and I would have never thought of doing anything remotely like this when I turned 18, which would have been in 2007, excuse me. And he at 18 already has that much hate in his heart. Y'all cannot tell me that this thing is not generational. Franklin Barrett Sechriest was arrested last November by criminal investigators with the Austin. Okay, I read that part. It says the detectives then traced the plate back to Sechriest's mother's home where he lived, according to a state warrant for Sechriest's arrest. The alleged arson attack caused more than $150,000 in damage to Congregation Beth Israel, destroying the building's historic doors, ruining its stained glass windows, and causing extensive smoke damage throughout the sanctuary, synagogue officials announced at the time. Sechriest was subsequently charged in federal court with one count of arson, which carries a maximum of 10 years in prison. Sechriest kept a series of journals found by FBI agents in which he wrote about his apparent hatred for Jews and black people, along with his feelings about the food at Buffalo Wild Wings. Prosecuted, well, that was a very random entry considering the pattern that he was talking about in his journal. In one entry from October 31st, Sechriest wrote, "I set a synagogue on fire," court records say. In response to a sealed motion by Sechriest's lawyers to have him committed to an unnamed out-of-state psychiatric hospital pending trial, prosecutors argue that Sechriest is simply too dangerous to house anywhere but a highly secure jail. This, they said in a February 2nd filing, was borne out in large by evidence gathered in arson, such as materials commonly used to make Molotov cocktails, signifying his intent to engage in more violent criminal conduct and escalate his dangerousness. The prosecution also revealed for the first time that Sechriest's behavior had grown increasingly violent in the period leading up to the synagogue attack. The evidence showed that not only that the defendant set fire to the Congregation Beth Israel Synagogue, a Jewish place of worship, on October 31st, 2021, but that defendant also committed an armed robbery of 4 black victims and a Hispanic victim on the campus of Texas State University in August 2021. Now, notice what they did there. There was no mention of a Hispanic individual anywhere in this article, even in the title, until this point. And they do this a lot. Whenever there's an issue going on with the racism that black people face in America, they have to find a way to slip one, at least, Hispanic person in there somewhere, because they got to keep that whole black and brown coalition thing alive. Can someone please let me know, because I'm not sure, down in the comments, who kicked off that black and brown coalition thing? And I might have to pin that as a comment just so I can get the response a little bit faster, because I'm very curious. Because I know it's easy to say that a black person did it, not saying that a black person didn't do it, but look at who keeps peddling it the most. When you look at these articles that are written by non-black people. I mean, let's be real here. How many black people writing for the Daily Beast? The filing states, adding that the nature and extent of this evidence alone justifies defendant's detention. The facility recommended by the defense is also not equipped to keep a defendant accused of serious violent felonies in custody for the duration of treatment, and refuses patients ordered into treatment by court order, according to prosecutors who also argue that Sechriest is a serious flight risk, something that wasn't mentioned in the judge's initial detention order. The evidence presented to the court, including testimony from the defendant's father, show that the defendant has no ties whatsoever to Texas generally or to the Austin community in particular. Defendant and his parents moved to the Austin area from Minnesota only a few months ago so that the defendant could attend Texas State University and enlist in the Texas State Guard. Well, maybe it's a good thing he didn't enlist considering his track record. Since he's been arrested, the defendant is no longer enrolled as a Texas State student and is no longer affiliated with the Texas State Guard, if he ever was. Thus, whatever minimal ties he has tried to establish in the area no longer exists. Defendant's repeated request to be transported out of jurisdiction for mental health treatment only further highlight his lack of ties to this community. After his arrest for the synagogue arson, Sechriest resigned from the Texas Guard. A spokesperson for the Texas Military Department, which oversees the Guard, was told the Daily Beast. Sechriest spent most of his childhood in the San Diego area, where his father, Vernon, worked as a surgeon, his lawyers explained in the December 2021 filing. As a child, Sechriest experienced challenging this is what they're about to do. Now they're going into his childhood to see if they could pick anything that could lead them to why he did what he did. Here it comes. He experienced challenging psychological and physical symptoms, the filing states. In 2011, it says Sechriest was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, autism spectrum disorder, mood disorder, sensory processing disorder, ADHD, and anxiety disorder in 2016, and the following year, possible mast cell activation syndrome, a condition that causes debilitating allergic reactions. Now, this is the first time that I've read an article when they talk about someone having a quote-unquote mental health issue, actually list down the diagnosis that the person actually has. If they have documented this, they're going to use that, and they're going to lean heavy on that. In 2015, Sechriest moved with his parents from California to Minnesota, where he completed his high school diploma online during the COVID pandemic. According to the defense, the family moved to San Marcos, Texas in 2021, where Sechriest was arrested for the arson. Sechriest has no prior juvenile or adult criminal history and is financially dependent on his parents with no independent means or ability to flee, his lawyers say. Defense attorney Daniel Wanamaker, who was representing Sechriest, told the Daily Beast on Wednesday that Sechriest's autism means he is not a typical 18-year-old. Right now, we're trying to figure out if my client is competent, Wanamaker said. To me, sanity is still a potential issue. I really need to get to the bottom of what was going on in Franklin's world, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do that in the condition he is in now. In a search of Sechriest's home in 2021, Jeep Cherokee, FBI agents said they found glass bottles, lighter fluid, a lighter, and stormproof matches, which the Bureau said were ingredients for making Molotov cocktails. You know, for someone who has all of these disabilities or these mental issues, he sure knew how to make a Molotov cocktail, and he knew where to throw them, and he knew exactly who to target. And let's be clear here. Let's say, he has all of these things. That still doesn't negate the fact that he committed what would definitely be seen as a hate crime, which should be seen as two hate crimes, but we know which one they're going to lean on more. That's why I said at the beginning, guess which one they're getting on him the most about, because while they are mentioning that he committed this arson and burned down the synagogue, they touch lightly on what he did prior to that, which means that's not what they were going to really get him on. Again, black people taking a back seat to everybody else, even when it's clearly a hate crime. But we don't have a hate crime on the books. We don't have a ADL on our side like the Jewish community does, or anti-black hate crime bill on the books like the Asian community does. We are literally on our own. Along with Sechriest's diaries, investigators said they also discovered a number of racist stickers in Sechriest's possession, such as one with illustration of a migrant family seen through a rifle scope reading "No invader is innocent." Another showed police officers, politicians, and doctors with Jewish stars obscuring their faces and swastikas at the bottom. "Would you kill them all to seize your rights?" it said. "The price of freedom is paid in blood." But Wanamaker on Wednesday described Sechriest's alleged descent into extremism as one of the more tragic cases he's handled in nearly 4 decades as a lawyer. He said the magistrate judge who at first handled Sechriest's case believed he should be in a psychiatric facility, but that prosecutors put the kibosh on that plan. Of course they did, because this guy, with that level of thinking, it doesn't matter how much of many disabilities that he has. The fact is he has an intense hatred for certain groups of people. Like, just imagine they put him in a psychiatric hospital or facility and those same type of people that he hates happen to be in there. He would be a risk to them. Any 18-year-old thrown in jail for 4 months would have a rough go of it, but with autism, I think we're doing ongoing harm to him. See, here they go. Cue the violins, cue the little tiny violin, and get the Kleenex and wipe away the tears. Because had this been a black boy that had all these disabilities, all these mental issues, do you think they would have been that compassionate with him? I don't think so. It's bad enough that, black people as a whole, as a collective, that a lot of us don't address the mental issues that go on in our community. And then on top of that, even when we have disabilities or mental issues, how we get dealt with is almost as if we are completely fine. How many stories have I talked about, or many people in this space have talked about, where black people have had mental disabilities or mental health issues, and they still get dealt with, quote unquote, accordingly by the letter of the law in this a nation we call the U.S. Again, our America, their America. 2 different worlds, 2 different spectrums, 2 different levels of consequences. Unfortunately for us, a lot of us are not alive to see a consequence if there's one to be had. Wanamaker told the Daily Beast, adding that he will keep pushing for therapeutic treatment. "My concern is my client's health and well-being. Physically, he's lost about 30 pounds, and psychologically, I think he's being harmed by being detained." Wanamaker claimed that the computer assholes who he said lured Sechriest into their world during the early days of COVID-19 lockdowns were the real villains. "You can have more than one victim in a case," Wanamaker said. "I know my client is accused of a serious crime, but I think my client is a victim as well. Wove hit and autistic kids are isolated because of the condition naturally." Well, here's the thing. Granted, he does have all these issues, but they make it seem like the way that his attorney is making it out to be, if other kids who have autism out there were affected by the pandemic like everybody else, why didn't they go out and commit the same crime that he did? Then if that was the case, then you will probably have a stronger case. But the fact that he was the only one that did it, no, he had already had these thoughts before then. So to try to use that as an excuse, to me, does not fly. He may have all these issues, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he has hatred towards certain groups of people. They're trying to mask, or they're trying to hide behind the fact that he has these issues, that he has these mental health issues, to excuse his behavior. And that doesn't excuse it. It doesn't. And so with the lockdown, just like everybody else, he retreated to the internet. And the real bad guys here, in my opinion, are the far right-wing ultra-nationalists who prey on people like my client. They're vulnerable and they're easy pickings because they're looking for somebody that will give them the time of day. And I think my client fell prey to those people. It's very, very sad. Months later, Congregation Beth Israel continues to recover from the fire. In a November 9th letter to the congregation shared with the Daily Beast by Beth Israel board member Oliver Bernstein, senior rabbi Steve Folberg, and Beth Israel president Lori Adelman, said damage to the temple sanctuary was far more extensive than first thought, and that repairs will be much more expensive than they realized. Anti-Semitic acts have been on an upswing in the Austin area, which Southern Poverty Law Center senior fellow Eric Ward described to the Daily Beast last fall as a wake-up call to the community. In response to the synagogue attack, Shalom Austin and the Anti-Defamation League's Austin chapter sponsored a rally for kindness days after the fire Sechriest allegedly set. Sechriest remains detained without bail. I wonder, they're going to have to go do a talk with him, because, you know, when Whoopi Goldberg did said what she said, then they suspended her, right? Then they have to like talk to her. When Nick Cannon said what he said, he went on a whole apology tour, much like she did. And then they have to talk to him and kind of retrain his mind. I wonder, are they going to go and have a talk with him? Because compared to, I mean, there's no comparison. What he did versus Nick Cannon and Whoopi Goldberg combined, there is no comparison. This guy actually burnt property. He destroyed property because he hated a group of people. But I doubt that he's going to get the same treatment, because then again, who is he? Then he's also PC. Now, like I said, this article, like I kind of figured it would, focused more on the fire at that synagogue than what happened prior to that, which was him robbing those 4 black students. I'm not going to throw that one Hispanic in there, because I feel like they just kind of tokenized that person, just threw them in there just because. I mean, you know, it's messed up, but still, I know where my focus is. If they only went on the black students he robbed, this for them would be a non-story. As you can see, it was a non-story because they barely mentioned them. As you can see, it didn't matter that he robbed them. It only mattered that he burnt the synagogue. That's what they got him on. Because if there's any charges to be had, they're heavily focused on the arson. You heard what it said right there. They said if he can get convicted, he'll face up to 10 years in prison. But they're only talking about the arson, not the robbery of the 4 black students. And he wrote in his journal that he did not like black people and Jewish people. But like I said, who did they lean on the most to get him in jail now? There you go. Y'all let me know what you think about this down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you are new. Make sure you hit that bell to be notified when I upload a new video or go live.